Welcome to Mind Secrets Lab. Most people see success, but very few understand the psychology behind it. Welcome to Mind Mastery.
Elon Musk doesn't think like the rest of us. He doesn't follow the well-trodden path. He doesn't copy systems just because they're there. Instead, he has a peculiar habit of breaking reality down into its most fundamental pieces and then rebuilding it from scratch in a way that makes more sense. This isn't just some quirky personality trait. It's a mental tool, a way of seeing the world that has allowed him to completely revolutionize industries that were stagnant for decades. It's the single habit that explains how one man could fundamentally change how we think about cars, rockets, and the future itself. So, how does he do it? And more importantly, what can we learn from his approach to understand the mind? We have to go back to the beginning. Elon Musk was born in 1971 in Pretoria, South Africa. From a young age, he wasn't like the other kids. He was quiet, introverted, and possessed a relentless curiosity. While others were playing outside, Elon was often lost in the pages of encyclopedias and science fiction novels, devouring information at an incredible rate. His childhood wasn't easy. He was a small, bookish kid, making him an easy target for bullies. The social isolation was painful, but it had an unexpected side effect. It pushed him inward, forcing him to rely on his own mind and his own thoughts for company. This intense inner world became his training ground. It's where he learned to think deeply and independently. At just 12 years old, he taught himself how to code and created his first piece of commercial software video game called Black, which he sold to a magazine for about $500. This wasn't just a lucky break or a flash of childhood genius. It was an early sign of a powerful cognitive skill, the ability to see patterns, understand systems, and build something new from the ground up. He wasn't just consuming information, he was already using it to create. This drive to build, to solve, and to look beyond the surface would become the defining feature of his entire life. Driven by a dream of being at the heart of technological innovation, Musk eventually made his way to the United States. But his arrival wasn't a glamorous one. He came with very little money and a whole lot of ambition. The early days were a brutal grind. He co-founded his first company, Zip2, with his brother. And during that time, he literally slept on the office floor. He'd shower at the local YMCA because he couldn't afford an apartment. He poured every ounce of his energy and every dollar he had into his work. And even after he achieved his first major success with the sale of Zip2, and later with PayPal, the struggle was far from over. In fact, it got worse. He invested his entire fortune into two seemingly impossible ventures: SpaceX, a rocket company, and Tesla, an electric car company. The world thought he was crazy. And for a while, it looked like the world was right. Tesla was bleeding money, plagued by production problems, and teetering on the edge of collapse. SpaceX was even more dramatic. The first rocket launch failed. The second one failed. The third one failed. Taking a NASA satellite with its, Musk was on the verge of personal and professional bankruptcy. He described it as staring into the abyss. Most people would have quit. They would have cut their losses and walked away. But Elon Musk isn't most people. It's in this moment of near total failure that the key difference in his psychology becomes crystal clear. He didn't see failure as a final verdict. He saw it as data. Each explosion, each production delay was simply a problem to be solved. So what is this psychological engine that drives him through impossible odds? Experts and psychologists identify Musk's core method as first principles thinking. To understand how radical this is, you first have to understand how most of us think. The vast majority of people, most of the time, reason by analogy. We look at how something has been done before and we essentially copy it, maybe with a few minor tweaks. It's like following a recipe. This is efficient for everyday life. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every time we want to drive somewhere. But it's a terrible way to innovate. Reasoning by analogy limits you to small, incremental improvements on what already exists. Musk does the opposite. He ignores the recipe entirely. He starts from first principles. This means breaking a problem down to its most fundamental, undeniable truths. The things we know are absolutely true and reasoning up from there. Let's take rockets, for example. For decades, the prevailing analogy was, Rockets are expensive. That's just the way it is. So, space agencies and aerospace companies focused on making their incredibly expensive rockets slightly more efficient. When Musk decided he wanted to go to Mars, he first tried to buy old Russian rockets, but they were astronomically expensive. Instead of accepting that fact, he asked the first principles question. What is a rocket actually made of? Well, it's made of aerospace-grade aluminum alloys, titanium, copper, and carbon fiber. So he then asked, what is the value of those raw materials on the commodities market? He did the math and discovered that the cost of the raw materials was only about 2% of the typical price of a rocket AHA. This was the breakthrough. The rocket itself wasn't inherently expensive. What was expensive was the incredibly inefficient process humans had developed for building and launching them. All the bureaucracy, the layers of suppliers, and the fact that they were throwing away a vehicle the size of a building after every single use. By reasoning up from the first principle that the materials were cheap, he realized he could build his own rockets for a fraction of the cost, especially if he could figure out how to make them reusable. That single mental shift, from analogy to first principles, is the reason SpaceX exists. He applied the same logic to cars, questioning why batteries had to be so expensive, and created a global movement toward electric vehicles. The real-world impact of this way of thinking is staggering, and it extends far beyond just one or two companies. Because Elon Musk dared to question the fundamental assumptions of an industry, electric cars went from being a niche, almost comical idea to a mainstream, high-performance reality that is now reshaping the entire global auto industry. Because he broke rockets down to their raw materials. Reusable rockets went from the realm of science fiction to a routine reality, dramatically lowering the cost of access to space. This, in turn, has made private space travel possible and is paving the way for a multi-planetary future. He is applying the same thinking to brain-computer interfaces with Neuralink and to urban transportation with the Boring Company. The lesson here is profound. These incredible leaps in innovation didn't come from just being smarter than everyone else. They came from a commitment to thinking differently. They came from the courage to ignore the chorus of that S. How it has always been done, and to ask, but why? It demonstrates that the greatest limitations we face are often the ones we impose on ourselves through our own assumptions. So, what does this all mean for you and me? We might not be trying to build rockets or colonize Mars, but we all face problems. We all have goals. We all have areas of our lives where we feel stuck. The lesson from Musk's approach is powerful. If you want average results, it's simple. Copy what average people do. Think by analogy. Follow the crowd. But if you want extraordinary outcomes in your career, your business, your creative projects, or even your personal life, you have to be willing to do what others won't. You have to question the assumptions that everyone else takes for granted. When you face a problem, don't just ask, how do people normally solve this? Instead, ask, what are the fundamental truths here? What are the raw materials of this problem? Break it down to its core components and build your solution from the ground up. TICs are there. It requires more mental energy, but it is the only path to true innovation and breakthrough results. In the end, the story of Elon Musk and his unique way of thinking proves one thing very clearly. Reality is not as fixed as it appears. It's negotiable. The rules, the systems, the way things are, were all created by other people who are no smarter than you. And if you are brave enough to take them apart, question them, and rebuild them from first principles, you can create a new reality for yourself, and maybe even for the rest of the world. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration of thought valuable, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the minds that shape our world.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel. Enjoy more videos.